Hello there, Ray here, and today I will be showcasing as well as explaining my advanced blaze only farm. Unlike other blaze farms which use blaze spawners to spawn in the blazes, my farm uses naturally spawned mobs which can spawn in blazes in Nether Fortress walkways. Since the 1.9 update, blaze rods are extremely useful, even more useful than they were before. Here you can see that we got blaze rods and you can turn those into brewing stands as well as in end rods, and you can even use them for fuel. Then you can turn those into blaze powder, which can be used to fuel your brewing stands. Then you make magma cream, and then you make the new magma blocks, as well as fire charges, which can be made into fireworks, and ender eyes, and then that can make ender chests as well as ender crystals. And you can also use them for potions, such as potions of fire resistance. This farm allows a player to kill an average of 18,400 blazes per hour. This comes to about 306 blazes per minute. With looting 3, you're capable of getting 36,800 rods per hour. With blazes giving 10 XPs each, this means it comes out to being 184,000 XPs per hour. And this means that you can go from level 0 all the way to level 216 in 1 hour, which makes this farm the second fastest XP farm in vanilla survival. But with this comes a cost. The cost of this farm is that it is quite complex and it uses a wide range of different tricks. This farm started out as a silly idea that I had, but it just happens to be that most good ideas get started as silly ideas. But it wasn't until I started working on designing of the Wither Grave that I actually came across something extremely useful that I could apply into this farm. This is my old prototype prior to the Wither Grave build. Here you can see I was testing with nether brick and nether brick spawning with mobs, as well as using gas to push the mobs towards the center. One of the problems I was having is that the mobs were actually spawning here on the rail, so I came in and put carpet over top of all the rail, but the problem was I was having the minecarts get stuck here. So then I had the idea if I just put trapdoors above the rail, then that the mobs wouldn't spawn as well as the gas would go through. Problem is with this is that occasionally I was having blazes as well as skeletons actually spawn in between the trapdoor and the ground here. So this was quite interesting, but I later came in and put skulls in here and this fixed the problem. But when I came around and built the Wither Grave, I was able to just switch out the bottom here and then come in with the normal block and then go back and put in a trapdoor, since this would actually only allow mobs that were inside of a walkway fortress to spawn there. And this just happened to be in the Wither Grave that there was no walkway fortress, so I could actually prevent this problem without actually using wither skulls, which was quite expensive at the time. The Blaze Farm starts out as 2 intersections out of Nether Fortress walkway. Here you can see that there is 2 intersections here, and both intersections are laid out where they're touching each other. And I'm using Omega Nex's utility mod, which shows the bounding boxes of these fortresses. And each of these walkways allows the mobs from the Nether Fortress to be able to spawn in a 19 by 19 by 10 meter area. So by using 2 of these intersections, we can have quite a bit of spawning room for the Nether Fortress mobs. What is also special about these 2 intersections is that they have generated at the lowest possible point, so that all the blocks within these 2 intersections, if you put spawning floors there, would still be within the first 4 subchunks. So that means if we remove all the other blocks above this intersection, the mobs will spawn here more quickly since they have less places to check and place mobs above. The area around the blaze farm has been removed of all the blocks, allowing there to be a perimeter so that the blazes will only be able to spawn in this one spot here. We've also moved all the blocks above the blaze farm as well, just to increase the mob spawning within inside the farm. The blaze farm itself sits inside of the 2 intersections that I showed earlier, so that any type of Nether Fortress mob can attempt to spawn in this area. To prevent the other types of Nether Fortress mobs from spawning, I have placed in the trapdoors on the ceiling, so this would just allow the blazes as well as the skeletons to spawn in, and occasionally a small lava slime will spawn in here. To prevent the medium-sized lava slimes from spawning, I have trapdoors on either side, and this would just allow it so that when medium lava slimes try to spawn here, they would bump up against this trapdoor here, so therefore they would not actually spawn in this area. To remove the mobs from the farm so that more new blazes can spawn in the farm and that the old blazes don't just sit and hold up the mob cap, I came up with the stationary gas pusher. This is like a gas sweeper kind of device, except the gas is just stationary, since in 1.9 mobs can actually spawn inside of other mobs that don't have a permanent collision box, and so the mobs can actually spawn here, and this ice just allows it so that once the mob starts moving, he will keep his momentum, so that once the mob are on this ice, they will slide fairly quickly over here and into this nether portal. I went through several different designs on how to actually use stationary gas to push off mobs in an efficient way, and I came up with this design that works fairly good for this blaze farm. And this is a 5x5 area that each gas can push mobs off of, and the trapdoors are actually used on the sides just to take up some gaps so that when the blazes come by they don't get outside of the gas pushing area. And the same goes for the areas between the 2 gas, since this area here is not really being used by either ghast to push mobs out. I have trapdoors here, allowing the ghast to continually push the mobs towards this nether portal over here. To prevent it so that mobs would not just get pushed up against this railing here and get stuck here, I had to have it so that the ghast in the minecart was slightly off into one direction. So this minecart that the ghast is in is pushed up against this trapdoor here, so that he's not quite in the center of the block. And the same goes for this trapdoor over here. So the ghast is actually sitting a little bit over here from the center. So if any mob that comes get pushed over to the edge, he will then get pushed to either side, depending on where he spawns in. And to get the ghast in this position is quite tricky, and you first would have to push the ghast in at it so that the minecart is at a half meter above the normal position, and then you have to push in the stairs here. Now since stairs actually have two collision boxes where the stair itself has a collision box from above, as well as the step part down here actually has a collision box, so that anything that is colliding with the stair part can actually go through. So this minecart here is actually sitting on the bottom part of the stair so that it does not actually just drop through and fall downwards. This allows it so that I can actually get another spawning spot out of this while still having the minecart being held up instead of just having like a bottom slab here. And same goes for this side. I have a stair here that's upside down. I have it so the ghast is sitting up on top of these stairs here so that he is not only pushing the mobs off of this level, he's actually tall enough so that he is intruding into this level too. So any mobs that spawn up here get pushed off as well. Now just to prevent the ghast from suffocating, I do have some top slabs here. Just allow the ghast to actually not suffocate here, as well as still push the mobs off. Now since this minecart actually protrudes into this level here where the mobs spawn, if a mob would happen to spawn inside of where this minecart is, he can actually push it around. Now the way I have it here, there is no spot where the mob can spawn here. It's just an empty spot. It's kind of a wasted spot. But on either side we have spawning spots. Now any ghast that, or any blaze that would spawn here would not affect the minecart, since the blaze would be pushed this direction instead of getting pushed into the minecart. And same goes for here, the blaze would be pushed away. If the blaze would be happen to get pushed into the minecart, he can move it around. This could cause the ghast to eventually maybe suffocate, or he would get moved out of line so that he was no longer pushing mobs up against this side. I also have 100% efficient spawning floor designs with stationary ghast, which I will show in a later video. So in total, this farm uses 42 ghasts that are caught with the minecart, so that they're just stuck in the minecart, and they're all named with a name tag so that they do not despawn naturally. And each module is exactly the same. So with each module, the ghast is pushing the mobs towards a corner, and in the corners are these nether portals. And the thing with nether portals is that they put off quite a bit of light. Each nether portal puts off a light level of 11. As you go away from the nether portal, it gets less and less. So it's usually not a good thing to have nether portals right beside where hostile mobs will spawn. Except in this case, blazes can actually spawn inside of a light level 11. And as you go downward, they can also spawn as well. Now in general, it's not a good idea to have even high light levels, even if mobs can spawn in that light, because with higher light levels, there's less likely for a mob to spawn in there. So as we go towards the center, there's more likely for the blazes to actually spawn, but the light from the nether portals actually prevents skeletons from spawning, since they need a light level of 7. And here in the center we actually have a couple spots where skeletons could actually spawn with a light level of 7, but we could actually light this up and prevent skeletons from spawning here, but it's really not worth it, since this also allows more blazes to spawn here. Now some mobs like pigmen and lava slimes do not care what light level it is, and they'll spawn in it. So even inside this nether portal, lava slimes as well as pigmen can spawn. But over here, lava slimes can spawn, but not pigmen, since they will collide with this trapdoor above. But inside these nether portals, this is actually a spot where pigmen can actually spawn inside the farm. So you do get some pigmen, but we do take care of them later. When the mobs get pushed off and into these nether portals, they get pushed into these broken nether portals, which the broken nether portals allow it so that when you get put through the nether portal, you are placed underneath of the nether portal in the other dimension. So here we have it so that the nether portal is broken by using a dragon egg. I showed this before, where you can use dragon eggs to actually break bedrock as well as other blocks, and you can break nether portals using the dragon egg. And by using this trick, if you actually were a mob and you get pushed over into this nether portal, you get placed underneath of the obsidian of the other nether portal. So here's the nether portal. Here we got placed underneath of it and directly into this trap. So the mobs that will come through the portal and appear down here are mainly the blazes, the skeleton, and the pigmen. And the tinier mobs, like the lava slimes, the tiny lava slimes, as well as baby pigmen, will just appear up here in the nether portal. And then they eventually push themselves out into the water where they will just drown, and that's how we get rid of them. But down here, you can actually occasionally get a tiny lava slime as well, if it jumps through the portal at the right height. So once a mob are inside of here, there's just a piston transporter which will pull the mobs along. And the way this works is that there is a signal that is traveling back and forth from either side, and they're just alternating. So once the signal comes through and reaches this side, it will just hit a monostabler, which will just send a pulse through these comparators, which will just allow these pistons to extend and retract for a short period of time. This will warp the mobs through the pistons, and they eventually get pulled to the center here. For either side is it's exactly the same. And then all the skeletons, as well as the pigmen, will just drop, and they will just die upon hitting the ground. But if there's a skeleton that has feather falling on its boots, it will eventually take sunlight damage from the sky, and it will break its helmet as well as kill it over time. Once mobs come here in the overworld, they no longer count towards another's mob cap, so it doesn't really matter how fast we move the blazes and other mobs through the overworld, as long as they don't really get too many here and then they start lagging you up. But what we have here is 2 pistons. This is just in case there is that tiny lava slime, then we can still pull it through, even if it's jumping or so. And pistons will pull the mobs through quick enough so that even like a tiny lava slime won't escape through these comparators here. And even though the setup is pretty simple, it works pretty efficiently just to transport the mobs towards the center. Normally here in the overworld would not be loaded since the player is in the nether and there is no player here in the overworld, so these chunks would normally not be loaded. What we have here is a chunk loader that is coming from this chunk here. This chunk here has a portal in it. Every time an entity comes through the portal, it will load this chunk. And then once this chunk is loaded, these hopper chunk loaders, which are facing into other chunks, will load the other chunks around it. And once we load a 5x5 chunk area, we will have it so that this center chunk, the white one, is an entity processing chunk. This will allow the game to process the entities such as blazes so that the game can actually transport the blazes even though the chunks are normally not loaded. Any mobs that have survived the fall here will then come into another sorter, and this sorter will sort out all the rest of the mobs. What we will mostly have is blazes, but occasionally we'll have some skeletons as well as some lava slimes as well as some pigma jockeys. And the pigma jockeys as well as the lava slimes will be killed off when this block gets pushed into here. So then all we have left is the skeletons and the blazes, and the blazes are slightly shorter than the skeletons, and they will get warped through this piston here, where the skeletons will hit the head on this top slab here. And they're all sitting on top of the snow layer so that they're at the right height where the skeletons cannot get through, where the blazes can get through. Once the blazes get pulled over here into the water, they will be sitting in the water and taking damage, and they eventually get down to 1 HP. And then from there they get pulled over here onto this side, and here they will get lined up against this cake so that way when the door opens they don't bump into the door when they get pushed. Then the door will open, and then the slime block will push them forward and push them into the nether portal. And then from the nether portal they will be taken back into the nether. Now this nether portal that the mobs get pushed through is also a broken nether portal, so that if you accidentally update any blocks next to the nether portal, it will see that the portal is missing a obsidian piece, and therefore it will remove the portal blocks from what's inside of it. So we cannot actually have the slime block directly touch the nether portal, and that's why there's a door here, because doors that are open and closing don't actually update blocks beside them. So to open this door we also have to wire the redstone from underneath, just so the redstone does not get too close to the portal and update it. So that's why we have a slime block here that pushes the mobs on this ice, so that the block that updates, which is the slime block here, isn't near the nether portal. Once you go through the nether, you come out where the blazes come out, and here you can see where the blazes come through the broken nether portal. They come and spawn underneath of the nether portal, and they come right into the killing chamber. So from here the player will just be sitting AFK, and all you have to do is, if you're into macros, you can use a macro to just swing your sword, which has looting as well as mending as well as unbreaking 3, so that you can use the XPs to repair the sword. If you're not into using macros, you can just allow it so that you semi-AFK, where you just sit here and you click ever so often to kill off the blazes. Now since when the blazes go through these portals, they automatically get placed down below. It don't matter if there's blocks there or not. You can actually have blocks there so that the blazes have blocks in their heads so that they cannot actually see the player, even if the player is in a spot where he would normally be viewed by the blazes. Since the block is in their head, they won't be able to see the player, therefore they actually won't be able to attack the player. Now there is a small chance that lava slimes could actually get through all those sorters and appear here in this nether portal. So on either side we just have a cactus, so that when the lava slimes pathfind along here, they eventually pathfind into one of these cactuses and just kill themselves. That way you don't have a buildup of lava slimes over time. I tested this farm over 72 hours and it was very consistent in giving around 306 blazes per minute on average. This is actually enough so that even if the player kills all these blazes, you can actually pick up all the XPs as well. And this is because it seems that the maximum amount of blazes that a player can actually take in worth of XP is around 320. Because of this, it's probably not worth making this farm any bigger than what it is right now. And right now it's 2 intersections, but if you really wanted to, you can make it as large as you want. If you could find more intersections, like you can make this, and if you found a 2x2 intersection, you can make it bigger, as well as you can also make it smaller. If you just want to use one intersection, you could actually just build this farm with one intersection as well. The biggest downside to this farm is just all the nether portals, because they cause quite a bit of lag every time a mob goes through the nether portal. The game has to try to figure out where that mob is coming from and where he is going, and there's so many nether portals and so many mobs going through this nether portal, so it causes quite a bit of lag, so you need a pretty beefy computer just to run this. Now you could also make this farm smaller, then you wouldn't have so much of this problem. My original idea was just to have this entire walkway fortress solid nether portal so that once the mobs spawned in they would instantly be teleported away, but this was extremely laggy. So I tried to compromise by having the mobs pushed to either 4 corners here so that most of the mobs get pushed into the same nether portal, so that after a while the game remembers where this mob came from and sends the mob into the overworld in the correct spot without having to calculate the position all over again. But the problem is that once in a while you get like a lava slime or something that comes into the portal a little bit differently, and then the game has to calculate that. And that's why I have these trap doors on here, just to try to funnel the mobs into these nether portals. And I did actually have large nether portals on the side, but I tried to minimize the amount of nether portals, just portal blocks in general. So I actually went with these smaller portals, but even though these blocks themselves actually do affect the spawning rates over this section here. So I have the farm turned on right now, and you can see the lag is actually not too bad, and up in the left hand corner you can see the entity count, and including all the gas as well as the minecart and the player, it's 85 normally. So you can see that it's getting some mobs spawning, but as soon as the mobs spawn in, they very quickly get pushed into another portal, and that's why the entity count doesn't get very high and never actually gets to the maximum amount, which is around 70 hostile mobs. And because of this, this farm continually keeps allowing so that more hostile mobs can spawn in there. And there is approximately 2,200 spawning spaces in this farm, so there's actually a lot of room for mobs to spawn, but they just leave the farm so quickly that they do not actually ever get up there that high. Now if I introduce the XPs as well as the loots that come off of the blazes, you can see that there is a little bit more lag, and once all the XPs come off of this, you'll see them as well. And you can see that even my frames don't actually drop, but the game is lagging just a little bit more. And here my frames actually sit at 30 frames per second, but currently the rods are just being picked up by the hoppers. But if you were probably going to try to get the maximum amount of rods, you would probably want to put in a few more hoppers, maybe a couple more hopper minecarts just to collect them all. But the XPs are actually just underneath me, and I really like the update where they change it so the XPs stay underneath the player. But you can see that while recording it's just a little bit more laggier with the XPs here. Now in 1.11 they may introduce the cramming effect, where if mobs are too many mobs in one area, then the mobs will kill themselves off until there is a certain amount of mobs. Now if this comes in by default, then you will probably want to send in smaller bunches of blazes at a time, and to do this you just have to increase the clock so that the clock sends in more blazes at a time rather than having them all built up and send them all at once. Although this farm is pretty great, I actually wanted to make this farm a little bit different. I actually want to have it so that the player could actually sit in the nether and just have the blazes collect in the overworld. Then the player would send a player-owned item through the nether portal, and this would actually allow the player to kill off the blazes in the overworld. So if a player would throw like a potion through the nether portal or a snowball and hit a blaze on the other side of it, it would actually count as a player kill, and therefore the player would get the looting effect as well as the loots off of the blazes, and even get the XPs off of the blazes, even though the player is not in that dimension. But currently there is a bug in the game where if the player puts any item through the portal, such as an arrow or a potion or a snowball, once it goes through the nether portal, the game forgets who actually threw that, and it just thinks it's a default snowball or whatever, and therefore when the snowball kills a blaze, it does not give any XPs or any special player-owned loot coming from the blazes. And currently that is a bug, and I have a link in the description to that bug tracker, and I'd greatly appreciate everyone would go and upvote this bug, because it is quite annoying and it would actually increase this farm productivity quite a bit. Here is a world download in the description if you would like to try out this farm for yourself. There you have it guys, the fastest blaze farm and the second fastest XP farm in all of vanilla survival. If you found this interesting, show me the like. If you'd like to see more outrageous survival builds, subscribe, and don't forget, if you have any questions, be sure to comment. Bye!